Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm playing host again this week. My name is Dan Sissick. I'm here in Las Vegas, and I'm going to let all the others on the panel jump out and introduce themselves before we get started with our book, Midnight in the Library by Matt Haig, and we're going to be starting in the part called Regret Overload. Go ahead and jump out, everybody.
Lori Evans in Denver.
Samantha in Indiana.
Hi, this is Catherine Clement, and we also have Jason Roberts down in Florida, but he's just listening today. So, and I'll be doing the reading. So if you want to turn in your book to Regret Overload, I'm on a Kindle, so I don't have the proper page, but I think someone said 36 or something like that. So, Regret Overload. She'd met Dan while living with Izzy in Tooting. Big smile, short beard. Visually a TV vet. Fun, curious. He drank quite a bit, but always seemed immune to hangovers. He had studied art history and put his in-depth knowledge of Rubens and Tintoretto to incredible use by becoming head of PR for a brand of protein flapjacks. He did, however, have a dream, and his dream was to run a pub in the countryside. A dream he wanted to share with her, with Nora. And she got carried away with his enthusiasm, got engaged. But suddenly, she'd realized she didn't want to marry him. Deep down, she was scared of becoming her mother. She didn't want to replicate her parents' marriage. Still staring blankly at the Book of Regrets, she wondered if her parents had ever been in love or if they had gotten married because marriage was something you did at the appropriate time with the nearest available person. A game where you grabbed the first person you could find when the music stopped. She had never wanted to play that game. Bertrand Russell wrote that to fear love is to fear life, and those who fear life are already 3 parts dead. Maybe that was her problem. Maybe she was just scared of living. But Bertrand Russell had more marriages and affairs than hot dinners, so perhaps he was no one to give advice. When her mum died 3 months before the wedding, Nora's grief was immense. Though she had suggested that the date should be put back, it somehow never was, and Nora's grief fused with depression and anxiety and the feeling that her life was out of her own control. The wedding seemed such a symptom of this chaotic feeling that she felt tied to a train track, and the only way she could loosen the ropes and free herself was to pull out of the wedding. Though, in reality, staying in Bedford and being single and letting Izzy down about their Australia plans and starting working at String Theory and getting a cat had all felt like the opposite of freedom. "Oh no," said Mrs. Elm, breaking Nora's thoughts. "It's too much for you." And suddenly, she was back, feeling all this contrition, all that pain of letting people down and letting herself down, the pain she had tried to escape less than an hour ago. The regrets began to swarm together. In fact, while staring at the open pages of the book, the pain was actually worse than it had been wandering around Bedford. The power of all the regrets simultaneously emanating from the book was becoming agony. The weight of guilt and remorse and sorrow too strong. She leaned back on her elbows, dropped the heavy book, and squeezed her eyes shut. She could hardly breathe, as if invisible hands were around her neck. "Make it stop." "Close it now," instructed Mrs. Elm. "Close the book. Not just your eyes. Close it. You have to do it yourself." So Nora, feeling like she was about to pass out, sat back up and placed her hand under the front cover. It felt even heavier now, but she managed to close the book and gasped in relief. Every life begins now. Well, Mrs. Elm had her arms folded. Though she looked identical to the Mrs. Elm Nora had always known, her manner was definitely a little more brusque. It was Mrs. Elm, but also somehow not Mrs. Elm. It was quite confusing. "Well, what?" Nora said, still gasping, still relieved she could no longer feel the intensity of all her regrets simultaneously. "Which regret stands out? Which decision would you like to undo? Which life would you like to try on?" She said that, precisely. Try on. As if this was a clothes shop and Nora could choose a life as easily as a t-shirt. It felt like a cruel game. That was agony. I felt like I was about to be strangled. What is the point of this? As Nora looked up, she noticed the lights for the first time. Just naked bulbs hanging down from the wires attached to the ceiling, which seemed like a normal kind of light gray ceiling, except it was a ceiling that reached no walls. Like the floor here, it went on forever. The point is, there's a strong possibility that your old life is over. You wanted to die, and maybe you will. And you will need somewhere to go to, somewhere to land, another life. So you need to think hard. This library is called the Midnight Library because every new life on offer here begins now. And now is midnight. Begins now. All these futures. That's what is here. That's what your books represent. Every other immediate, present, and ongoing future you could have had. So there are no pasts in there? No, just the consequence of them. But those books are also written, and I know them all. But they are not for you to read. And when does each life end? It could be seconds or hours, or it could be days, months, more. If you have found a life you truly want to live, then you get to live it until you die of old age. If you really want to live a life hard enough, you don't have to worry. You will stay there as if you have always been there, because in one universe, you have always been there. The book will never be returned, so to speak. It becomes less of a loan and more of a gift. The moment you decide you want that life, really want it, then everything that exists in your head now, including this midnight library, will eventually be a memory so vague and intangible it will hardly be there at all. One of the lights flickered overhead. The only danger, continued Mrs. Elm more ominously, is when you're here between lives. If you lose the will to carry on, it will affect your root life, your original life, and that could lead to the destruction of this place. You'd be gone forever. You'd be dead. And so would your access to all this. That's what I want. I want to be dead. I would be dead because I want to be. That's why I took the overdose. I want to die. Well, maybe, or maybe not. After all, you're still here. Nora tried to get her head around this. So, how do I return to the library if I'm stuck in a life even worse than the one I've just left? It can be subtle, but as soon as disappointment is felt in full, you'll come back here. Sometimes that feeling creeps up, other times it comes all at once. If it never arrives, you'll stay put and you will be happy there by definition. It couldn't be simpler. Give me just a second. It couldn't be simpler. So pick something you would have done differently, and I will find you the book. That is to say, the life. Nora stared down at the book of regrets lying closed on the yellow-brown floor tiles. She remembered chatting late at night with Dan about his dream of owning a quaint little pub in the country. His enthusiasm had become infectious, and it had almost become her dream, too. I wish I hadn't left Dan, and that I was still in a relationship with him. I regret us not staying together and working towards that dream. Is there a life where we are still together? Of course, said Mrs. Elm. The books in the library began to move again, as though the shelves were conveyor belts. This time, though, instead of going as slow as a wedding march, they moved faster and faster and faster until they couldn't really be seen as individual books at all. They just whirled by in streams of green. Then, just as suddenly, they stopped. Mrs. Elm crouched down and took a book from the lowest shelf to her left. The book was one of the darker shades of green. She handed it to Nora. It was a lot lighter than the Book of Regrets, even though it was a similar size. Again, there was no title on the spine, but a small one embossed on the front, precisely the same shade as the rest of the book. It said, My Life. But it's not my life. Oh, Nora, they are all your lives. What do I do now? you open the book and turn to the first page. Nora did so. Okay, said Mrs. Elm with careful precision. Now, read the first line. Nora stared down and read. She walked out of the pub into the cool night air. And Nora had just enough time to think to herself, pub? After that, it was happening. The text began to swirl and soon became indecipherable in fast motion as she felt herself weaken. She never knowingly let go of the book, but there was a moment where she was no longer a person reading it, and a consequent moment where there was no book or library at all. We can probably stop there.
Yeah, I think that's good. But anybody else have thoughts or think we should go on, or okay, we're stopping here?
Either way.
Okay, any thoughts, anybody?
Sounds good. Let's stop there. Good to be here, everybody. That's just a different way to think about, passing on from this life and, or having a decision. If someone were to be struggling with that and decided to overdose, I just never really thought about that, and that, just, I don't know, brings up a lot of thoughts.
For me, the way, excuse me, sorry, in listening to and reading along, I think we all have those moments in life where we're sitting there and we're just kind of like, when we're at our lowest moments and we're thinking, is it worth going on, or what do I do, or however, when we get in those moments in those times, and we look back and we kind of do that review of choices and the decisions that we make. It is almost like, in a way, a book. We're looking at the chapters and the bits and the pieces, and where, oh, well, maybe if I changed this and did this or that. And, sometimes it's easy to go back and pick up on some of those pieces, and other places it's not so easy. And I think that's where sometimes I think we get tangled up in how to move forward, because we want to take back some of what we regret not having, but we don't know how to get back there. And two, we don't know if that's really ultimately where we really want to go. So we're just kind of in that, and I can see where people can get kind of overwhelmed, to where in some cases where they do, kind of like Nora in this book, she just wants to die, because I don't think she also sees any value in herself either, and places any value on herself, and that her life matters either. And I think that's another part to look at too, is, that wherewithal inside of that she matters, and then going forward out from there of what she really wants. But I think she's so afraid to, and I think we all can get that way sometimes, be so afraid of really pushing for what we want, that we don't ever take that step, and then we just kind of stumble through the rest of our life, but we're never really fully satisfied or fulfilled. But yet we don't know how to go back and make the changes that we might want to change either.
Yeah, I can say that I definitely have had tons of regrets or things that I would rather have been different, but I have never, in all the minutia that I've been through, have ever wanted to kill myself. I guess I'm too chicken. I don't know. But how to move on, living with the regrets and the indecisions and being very indecisive, but also very independent and strong-willed, and it's just so confusing.
Yeah, well, you guys know because I've told you before. I was in such suicidal pain for 5 years before I got that last surgery, and so I thought about it every day, all day, every minute, like, uh, and my gift, what I consider my God-given gift of going out of body at an early age and realizing I'm not my body, and helping people die my whole life, and having the experience of being in such pure unconditional love that I can't even describe it in words. That has been a gift and a curse all my life, because it is so pure and so easy and so comfortable. It's like it's like your bed. When you really love your bed, when you have like the most comfortable bed in the world, and you just get in there and there's no place you'd rather be, it- you kind of want to go there, and so um having that gift has also been a little bit of a curse, because I know what it's like. I know how wonderful it is. And in comparison to this world, sometimes it seems like an easy choice. But I also recognize the um, futility of it, because I kind of believe, like this book, that, I'm just going to go to another life. And I think probably the reason have had such suicidal ideation in this life is probably because I killed myself in the last life. So I'm not going to do it this time around, regardless of what happens. But um, I was thinking, for some people, picking up this book is a mind blowing experience, because they've never ever considered that they live multiple lives. I mean, not everybody has even been subjected to the subject of reincarnation, maybe because of their religious upbringings or whatnot. I mean, to us, this kind of conversation is old, that's just what we do. But think of how mind blowing this book would be for some people who have never been, uh, you know, even had these thoughts that this is a possibility, to have multiple lives and even multiple parallel lives. So, because we tend to think so linearly, but it's not linear. It's just like all at once. So, how mind blowing such a little fiction book could be.
I was when you were reading this section where she was kind of like talking about the different books, and when she gets in the book, and then the librarian says that if you really want to live a life hard enough, you don't have to worry, you will stay there, as if you've always been there. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thought on this concept of, our lives right now, is if we kind of look at that as if, okay, we are here because we don't want to leave. We think we're regretting all the stuff from our past, and we think we're upset about it, but yet we're here. and we have the choice to leave, like what you were saying, Catherine. I mean, we could check out anytime that we, really got to the point where we felt like we were over it, right? And, because, I've been through a lot of different things in my life, the ups and downs and sidewayses and spirals. And it's just, I've had thoughts before where I'm like, what is the point of all this? And literally going, I'm just to that point where I just want to be done with all this mumbo jumbo and this chaotic insanity and that kind of thing. And yet I'm still here. I'm still here because obviously there's something about what's going on in my life that I've come into this life and chosen this, even though I may not know why, I may not know what the purposes of it. I may not understand all of the, what's on the other side, because I've not had that experience like what you're talking about, Catherine, other than being in kind of a meditative state. And that meditative state, I can go into that if I choose to, and that's a peaceful place. But yet I still am here, I'm still here. I'm still doing this life and working hard within it and experiencing it and having joys and having sorrows and having frustrations and anger and all of that kind of thing. And I mean, obviously I'm still choosing it because I could choose otherwise. And so I thought that was just kind of like an interesting kind of thought right there, is of what if, been to this midnight library, what if it is reality that there are all these different choices available to us, and we can choose something different at any time, but right now this is what we're choosing. And as happy as it is, or shitty as it is, or whatever it is in any given moment, we're still choosing it every day. And I think that is very enlightening, empowering. I don't know. I mean, I guess once we realize we are choosing it, that is kind of a big deal, and I know that some people would say, well, I'm only choosing it because, I don't want to go to hell, or I don't want, like you said, Catherine, I mean, sometimes we think we're choosing it because we don't want the alternative of the unknown of, another life that could be worse, right? But we also, if we look at it that way, it could be better too. It could go either way, just like any situation and any choice, is that the choice could either make something positive or the choice could make something negative. We don't know what the outcome is going to be. We just know that we're faced with this choice, and this choice in any given moment could be equally life-changing as it would be if we were to end this life and get into a whole different life. So, all right, they were trying to come in here and ask me something, so I'm going to jump out for a minute.
Yeah, you bring up a couple of good points, and I was just thinking that I know there's one regret that over the years kind of keeps coming in and out of my mind, because at one point I wanted to move from here in Las Vegas. I was about 19, and my mom pointed out some points, and I think I've talked about this a little bit before, and I really didn't have the money or the means or the put the thought process through into what I wanted to do. But I really wanted to move down to Arizona so I could live there for a year and then get state residency, and then maybe eventually apply for, like grants and scholarships or whatever I could get, or even financial aid, and go to ASU because they had a really good accounting program. I knew I wanted to go into accounting. I knew that was a good school to go, and I wanted to move and I wanted to go and do that. But in retrospect, after my mom talked to me and said some things, I stayed here and saved up money. Then in the meantime, during that, I ended up saving the money and then moving out on my own here, which totally changed the trajectory of my life, which in a lot of ways I don't have regrets about that. But I also have questions on this one side. Well, what if I had really done and gone down and really done that? how much different would my life be? Would I have done really good in school there? Would I have, you know, would it have been taken less time, even though it might have taken a little longer initially to get my residency, then apply for student aid or grants and scholarships and do my best that way. But then at the same time, go into big debt from that. Whereas here, I stayed here, moved out on my own, worked my way through college, paid for it myself. I have no student debt that way. I've had for the most part a good life. There are still ups and downs and things I don't like about it and would like to change, and you know, but once again, I could still go and make that change and go move to Arizona if I wanted to. But now in retrospect, does it fit what I want to do? And will it really bring me what I think it might? And I think, you know, as time goes on, yes, you can always maybe look at the regrets and maybe go back and try and go back and do those things. But in actuality, are you really in the same place or in the same frame of mind or in the same space as you were at that initial time? And I think you have to look at that too sometimes. And you have to weigh that against where you're at here and now, and in what's in your head and what's going on here and now. Because if I were to go to Arizona, it wouldn't be to go to school, it would be to, you know, but who's to say, you know, do I really want to still do that? Or do I want to move somewhere else? Or do I want to stay here? That's, you know, the thing, because there are lots of aspects of my life I'm still not fully fulfilled with. But at the same point, do I really have the energy, the time, the wherewithal? I'm not getting any younger. You know, those type of things come into play. And where does that all fit in? Because I know as I've gotten older, I've tended to look back at my life and see some things where I would like to have done things differently, you know, but how does that all really play in even now? And as I move forward with what's going on in my life now, that I am in here and now and living, and I'll admit I have my ups and downs. I have my days where I was like, okay, God, just take me out of this and let me go, you know, be done with this. But at other times, you know, I wake up every day and push through too. So where do we, because like the book, and I think I understand what the book's saying is, we have all these lives we could have lived and we could have chosen, and they're still there and available, maybe not in the exact same ways and means of what they were at one point, but in a lot of ways they're still there, and we could still make those choices to go live that. So what is it that keeps us where we're at? And the big question is, how do we know if we're really living the right life, I guess, so to speak?
I think we can kind of drive ourselves crazy about the what ifs and just accepting the now. This is what we have, is right now, what this is right now. Right now we're in book study group and we're all on different paths, and it's really difficult to me, it's difficult to decide, well, what do I want? Where do I want to go? I still haven't figured out what I want to be if I ever grow up. I'm just not sure. If I accept that I am here right now, this is what I'm doing, living this life, still have fears about what decisions I make or where I go, and the regret I don't regret marrying my first husband because I have two beautiful children that really don't even give me the time of day anymore. So why am I not so upset and ready to kill myself over that? I was never really raised with religious teachings and that, but somehow I think my soul knows committing suicide is the chicken way out in some ways, and it's selfish. That it's so terrible. I just can't be here anymore. But then I turn around and I go outside and enjoy the amazing planet we live on. And I'm gonna be quiet for a now.
But you brought up some good, you brought up some good points though. I mean, I think it is selfish and not fair to the rest of those around us, even though people may not act and respond or even do things the way we think they should, or even how they were brought up to, respond to stuff. My aunt is dealing with a similar situation that you have with one of her daughters. They love each other, but one of her daughters really doesn't have a lot of to do with her except the very minimal type things and stuff, but they don't have a close relationship. Her other daughters, she seems to have a better relationship with, but, and she yearns for that with both her daughters, but both her daughters are really close to their dad. But she doesn't hate her first husband because, that marriage didn't work out. But at the same time, I'm sure, she sits there and goes, what did she do wrong or what didn't she do right with her daughters or whatever, but she still goes on and lives and is happily married to her, current husband because her second husband passed away of a heart attack. So, you know, but dealing with all those things, sometimes, I wonder, how can she still be here because she's lived through a lot too. But yet, I think we all, I think it's a decision we all have to make, but I think it comes from even deeper, and I can't even explain why I say it comes from something deeper. It just comes from a strength, a source. For me, I'll say it comes from God. That, I still believe there's still something meant for my life, and that somehow my purpose and the path I've chosen somehow fill in or help or matter to those around me in the lives I'm intertwined with, like family members, good friends, stuff like that. So in that, I think there's also a meaning and a, purpose and all that too. And sometimes the decisions we try to make, sometimes we make, and I hope you understand the way I say this, but sometimes they're presented to us to make decisions easier, maybe sometimes, which way to go because of the interactions and the interplay with other lives that we're involved with too.
Okay, so what I'm about to say is not going to be popular, and I am in no way, uh, quote, condoning suicide, but I would ask you to just for a second take another look at it from another angle. I know that it feels like when somebody takes their life, to us, the people that miss them, it feels very selfish and very like, how could they do that and everything. But when you're that person in that place, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, and you can't get out of it, like, everybody thinks that there's no pain that a drug can't fix, and that's not true. There's pain that drugs don't work on. And when you're in that place and you're looking out at other people and you're trying to make this decision of, should I end it? And you feel completely worthless to everybody. You feel like the world would be a better place without you. You really believe that. And of course it wouldn't, but that's what you believe because you're not in your right space at that time. But when you're really there, it looks to you like everybody else is selfish for wanting you to have to live in excruciating pain every second of your existence. How selfish can all those people be to want you to have to live like that just so that they can feel better about themselves that you didn't take your life? You see what I mean? Just put yourself in their shoes for 1 second, not for longer than that, because I don't want you to be in that headspace. But it's easy to say it's a selfish act, but you can see that from 2 different points of view now, that it either party could call the other selfish is all I'm trying to say. It's a horrible place to be, and I wouldn't want it for anybody. And my heart really goes out to people that are in that space, because I've been there and I've pulled myself out of it, but I know how hard it was. And I understand that space. And I just have to say over and over again that I'm so glad that I got myself out of that. Like, I treasure the life that I have now so much. And I'm so glad that I didn't take that away from myself. But it's not always, they're not in the space to really think about the effect that it's going to have on everybody else around them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And just as God doesn't judge those people, I try not to judge them as well.
Yeah, I agree, Catherine. And it's hard to not be angry at a person who commits suicide and, because of the pain that you experience when that happens. But we also have to recognize that we are the only ones that can, cause our own pain. No one else can cause that. And, my husband had somebody very close to him in his life that committed suicide when my husband was in his 20s. And that person was probably around my age right now, maybe a few years older, but not by a whole lot. And I think about how he was affected by that. And I know that he was hurt by it a lot, but yet at the same time, I guess that the person had left a note and said, I'm doing this for you so that I'm not a burden on you, and I'm not a burden on, other people in your life. And he also had said something to the effect that he was hoping that his suicide would bring certain family members closer. And so from that perspective, he thought he was doing something to better the lives of the people around him versus, what most people would think would be selfish, you know. So he felt like he was doing a selfless act by taking himself out of the picture. And, you know, and of course it didn't work out the way he thought, you know, in terms of bringing the people together. But I can also say beyond a shadow of a doubt that if that person hadn't committed suicide, Chris and I wouldn't be together right now. We wouldn't have our family that we have right now. And, you know, and if we believe in this aspect that from the other side and from the other, you know, from the spiritual side, that we can see the bigger picture, and as a spiritual being, we are helping to orchestrate certain things to happen in our group lives. That, I mean, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that if it was my time and I was ready, that I could leave this life. But I am not feeling compelled to leave this life, and I am still here. And so whatever part that I am playing in this life is what I'm supposed to play. And if it was time for me to go, it would be easy, you know. And just like with you, Catherine, I mean, you know that if it was time for you to go, you'd be gone. I mean, it wouldn't have anything to do with what we're experiencing in our lives right now, because I can see that, you know, between all of us, we all have our struggles, we all have our regrets, we all have the things that we go through in our lives that we already know there are other people out there in the universe who have committed suicide for way less. And for whatever reason, they were capable of being able to do that. And I, you know, just like when it comes down to, you know, whether it's killing yourself or killing someone else, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, I could not kill another person on purpose. I mean, and I would be devastated if it accidentally happened. I mean, I can't even step on a big spider. I have to capture it and set it free outside. I mean, it's just, that is not in me to do that. And yet I know that there are people in the world that for them, it's no big deal. That's easy peasy. And that's a weird thing to think about. But so I truly believe that if it is your time to go, you can go. And yeah, all, you know, maybe the rest of us are going to be hurt by that, but whatever reason, it's necessary for us to go through that. And that's just, I don't know, that's my thoughts on it.
I was going to say, I get what you're saying, Catherine, and I hear it and I understand and I agree with it too. Basically, fundamental aspects of it, yes, because when you're there and when you're in those points, you really don't. All you have is the pain. All you have is the hurt. All you have is that overriding sense of nothingness, you know, that there's just nothing there for you. And what do you have to offer everybody else? And you really don't feel that there is anything. And you also don't feel that you have anything to offer yourself even. So I get that. And I want to just express my thanks and my gratitude and thankfulness that you never did go through that, because you are a integral part of this group. You know, I love you to death. So from that aspect, you know, my life has been enriched because of you and who you are. And even though you and I don't agree with everything fundamentally, and our beliefs are sometimes different, but I still believe that deep down God had you here for a reason and for you to be a part of my life through this group. So in that sense, you know, that has impacted me a lot. So with that, I'm glad. So from there, but you know, I know somebody that committed suicide. I don't know the depths of what he was going through. I just know that he did. and I've heard of other people, and I've seen the ramifications of that with the other people. And having gone, and I've had my moments where I've just sat there and thought, why am I here? I really have, and it, but I don't know why or how. I somehow just plodded through it and, got to thinking about the people I love and care about the most. And I think that's what pulled me through, was those that I love the most and care about the most. I didn't want to hurt them, and I didn't want to take away from their lives. So for me, in that aspect, that's why I think, that's what helped, keep me going. That and my, my faith in God, that's, but for other people that don't know what they have, or just the pain is so overwhelming, and the regrets and everything of life that, we all get bombarded with, that can be, too much sometimes, and more than, and it's hard to sometimes pull yourself out of it. And in that headspace, you really, I do believe, I really think you are doing the world a service by taking yourself out of it, and that's something you really believe, and that you really feel, and that you really think is the best choice. So in that sense, deep down, I don't want to say it. I agree with it, but I get it. I understand it, and I'm trying not to judge it or look at it in that way. I'm trying to look at it for what it is, and help work on my thoughts about that too.
And I have a new regret now. I just blanket statements, things like it's selfish and all of that. And I understand I've not been in that space. And I too agree that I am so glad you're in our life, Catherine. I got to learn how to think more broadly so that I don't make those kind of blanket statements. And
Well, I certainly didn't want to give anybody any regrets. I just wanted you to have another point of view is all. And, pretty much all the stuff that humans disagree about or whatever, once you see the other point of view, most of the time there's not so much of a disagreement, unless people are caught up in some kind of dogma that's been drilled into their head or something, but when you're just really talking to people one-on-one, and each person can share their point of view, usually we can understand the other point of view. We just maybe never really thought to look at it. Just like with Nora here in this book, one of the things I wanted to bring out is how, let me find this page, said, and she got carried away with his enthusiasm, got engaged, but suddenly she'd realized she didn't want to marry him. Deep down, she was scared of becoming her mother. She didn't want to replicate her parents' marriage. So how many of us are choosing paths in life, not because of what we want or what we think we would like, but because of what we don't want, I love my mom. I love her tremendously, and she has been such an inspiration in my life. In good ways, there are traits about my mother that I would prefer not to replicate. Just as I'm sure my kids could say about me as well, I think I do replicate them. the older I get, I do think I replicate them sometimes. But it's interesting how we tend to do the things that we don't want to do. And when you look at it from like a manifestation standpoint, it makes sense, because we're focused on, oh, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. And they keep telling us the universe doesn't hear don't, they just hear the rest of it. Somehow they don't hear those negative words. So when you say, I don't want to be that, you're focused on that, and then you become that, or you're afraid of a certain situation happening, and then that happens, so we really do have to be careful about our thoughts. Not that we want to be, thought police writing ourselves tickets all the time and just, add more guilt or whatever, but we do have to be careful about what we think. And on this, I don't want to bring it back to a sad situation, but I just have to say, on this business of getting down to the point of where you feel like there's no hope, that is very thought based. That is all about thoughts. Even if it's like with me, physical pain driving it, it's still my thoughts about the pain, the thought that this pain is not going to end, the thought that this pain is never, it's never going to allow me to do the things in my life that I want to do, or whatever the thought is. It's all about thoughts is what I'm trying to get to, so you have to learn how to reprogram yourself. I was just watching a webinar at about 5:00 this morning, about, because I don't sleep, because and it was about how programmable our DNA is. Like literally, they have taken like terabytes of information and downloaded it onto DNA and then re-uploaded it back onto a computer. Like, we are programmable, and we really have to take that seriously when we think about the way that we talk to ourselves, because we are programming ourselves with every word we say and with every word that we allow reach our ears and take in and absorb it, So I love you guys so very, very much. And like I said, I am so grateful to be here with you all. I treasure each and every one of you so much. And the world is just an exciting, amazing place, depending on your thoughts. So just, take control of your life, because you really can, through your thoughts, take yourself to a place of ecstasy or a place of no hope. Like, it's your choice. So you're right, Samantha, we're here. We're here. We choose it every day. And we might as well, if we're going to be here, we might as well make the best of it. So, I put on my rose-colored glasses every morning when I get up. I love you guys. Have a great week. And happy birthday to that sweet little Isabel.
I was going to throw out oh, go ahead, Lori. I'll let you go.
I just wanted to say the regret I had saying that is already gone, Catherine, so no worries. I'm so grateful for you and this group and all the things we discuss, the books we've read. And I haven't even been here near as long as a lot of you, but it's definitely our thoughts, because it can send you down that downward spiral in the rabbit hole. And it's something I deal with every day where I live. So I always try to think the good thoughts. Love you guys. Have a great week.
I'm going to try and take us out on a couple positive notes. Well, one not quite so positive, but it goes back to what you were saying, Catherine. Recently, they just did a study, and they said that some of these sugar substitutes that people use in like their coffees and whatnot, they say that that breaks down our DNA, which goes back to what you were saying, that we are programmable, and they've taken that and, shown it, and that, we're programming ourselves with a lot of what we think, say, and do. And then on another note, they've proven scientifically that, thankfulness and gratitude things, where you are thankful and grateful for the things that are good in your life, and you speak them or write them down or think about them or focus on them, and bring those back to the forefront of what you're thankful for, like family members, your job, your friends, having a roof overhead, things like that. You're for Samantha, your husband, and your kids, Catherine, you and your kids. I have no kids, but I have nieces. But the point is, if you look at those positive things and help keep those at the forefront, they tend to uplift you and help bring you back to that positive side of things. And I know it's easier said than done, because it's weird, those negative thoughts somehow can always seem to pervade and stay in our minds, whereas the positive and good thoughts and stuff were there, but then they just kind of flutter off and take off, and all of a sudden that bad feeling comes right back. So that's a constant thing, but they have proven that the more you are grateful and thankful, it has an effect, and it lifts you up. And hopefully, the more we can be thankful, just like, I'm thankful for this whole group. I love this group. I love you all. That, when I think about you guys, it makes me feel good. It makes me, think good thoughts. It makes me think good things, just like my family. When we can focus on those and put that back out in the universe, or to God, or, infinite intelligence, however you look at it, I think that goes back to bringing up our vibration and where we're at. And, the more we do it, the more we can see the positive in life, and not look at the regrets and let the regrets get to us and bring us down, and stop worrying about the regrets, but to live the life that we are living to the best and the fullest that we can.
I want to just real quick, Catherine, your statement about putting on the rose-colored glasses just really struck with me, because I'm sitting here going, we make it so much harder a lot of the times than what it really needs to be. And realistically, if we think back on some of the different books that we have read and talked about, and some of the techniques that we've discussed over the years about, just multiple different things, like doing meditations, or listening to positive music, or listening to positive affirmations, or like I have these audios that I listen to that have like subliminal messages in there with peaceful music and water sounds and all of those kinds of things. And years ago, before we started this, I was listening to a call that was the Think and Grow Rich call. And one of the things they talk about on there was to create this kind of mission statement of life. And I know that's not what they call it in that book, but you guys know what I'm talking about. And it's basically just your statement of purpose, and writing that out and reading it to yourself every morning. And, so we know these different techniques. And basically that's what it is. It's just putting on your rose-colored glasses every morning and thinking about those things, instead of all the mumbo jumbo that we typically want to do. We typically want to do all this negative, oh gosh, and instead of thinking, hey, I'm going to put on my rose-colored glasses today, because we know, or I know that if I do that, my day is going to be more positive, and my life will be more positive. Because if I do, like what we were saying, if our DNA is programmable by our thoughts and our feelings and all of that, that if we put on the rose-colored glasses every morning, then we're programming our DNA to go in the direction we want to go, versus saying the things we don't want or we're complaining about. And making ourselves go in that direction. So I think that's a great, I'm going to post, I just wrote myself a little note. I'm going to put that up in my office to remind myself every morning to put on my rose colored glasses in whatever form or action or way that takes. And because I know, I know that when I do those things, there's simple actions, even if it's just, a few moments of getting into a grateful and thankful space, like what you're saying, Dan, though that makes all the difference. And I don't know why I keep going in the other direction. It's just, I don't know, some weirdness, something. So, all right, that's all I got for today. You want to wrap it up, Dan?
Sure. Thanks for joining us for the Saturday Morning Mastermind with all my friends here, Jason, Catherine, Lori, and Samantha. We're here every Saturday, most of the time, at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. Pacific Time. We do different books. Right now, we're in the middle of the book, Midnight in the Garden by Matt Haig, or Midnight in the Library, sorry. I'm getting two books mixed up together. Sorry. But anyway, it's a fiction book, but yet it has brought out a lot of thought and a lot of talk, and opened, I think, all our eyes to a lot of things, along with every other book that we've done and talked about. You can catch us on Facebook at Mindset Mastery Collective. You can find out how to log in and jump on to the Zoom every week. You can also go to our YouTube channel that has all the replays of all the videos we've done over the years, for like the last 9 or 10 years now, however long we've been doing this. And you can go to our website at mindsetmasterycollective.com. And all those spots, you can find ways to find out how to join us here on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. We would love to have you come and join us, and look forward to it. And so with that, we'll see you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.